and girls, bitches, hoes, men, women, children, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to it. Your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. Bringing you guys our episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review. And on today's episode, today we're looking at a film that is another in the line of a crime thriller that I know some people feel has been milked to death since Silence of the Lambs and was helped out by Seven's success. And that maybe because people are rushing out to see these films, so the cow being milked was probably working in the studio's eyes. That's why they were continuing. But for me, it really doesn't matter how many films you put out. What matters is how they stand out and what they're able to bring to the table, which I mentioned in my Silent Hill review, which is up right now for those who want to see it. But you can have these similarities, but what matters is how they are delivered and whether or not they have an interesting bone in their body and leg to stand on, which is the question I'm going to be asking if today's movie has that. And what film is that, you may be asking? That film, oddly enough, is none other than The Bone Collector. But in order to find out if it works or not, grab your chicken bones, grab your pet rats, and all your computers, and let's talk The Bone Collector. Now, The Bone Collector, this is a film made in the year 1999, and this is directed by a guy named Phillip Noyce. Now, this is a guy who's directed films like Dead Calm with Billy Zane, Blind Fury with Rutger Hauer, which I think is a good one. He also directed 2 films with Harrison Ford, those being Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. A couple years before this, he did The Saint, which, was alright. If you guys haven't seen it, that was the one with Val Kilmer. And surprisingly, getting into this film, I didn't know this, but this was actually based on a book by Jeffery Deaver, which, judging by that, you can tell I never read the book, and I don't know how true this is to the book, so I'm not going to be comparing them or any changes to point out. So if anyone knows the changes in the book, let me know in the comments below. But the idea for this film came about when producer Martin Bergman got a hold of the rights of the book and decided to get an adaptation of the book going. Like I said, with this being the late 90s and a lot of studios were trying to replicate the Seven success New Line had, they saw this as a golden opportunity to get involved, bringing in Jeremy Lacone to handle the script. His first objective when writing this was to remain as faithful to the book as he could, but he condensed elements to really hone in on the characters and their stories, with further polish being done by Christopher Crowe, who had previously written the thriller Fear with Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon. They shopped the script around till it landed in the office of Universal Pictures, who liked the script but were worried about the production budget. Around this time, Columbia got word on the script as well and decided to work with them to get the movie going. So they sold half the distribution rights to them out of fear the movie would tank at the box office. The only thing left to do was hire a director, which led them to Phillip Noyce, who signed on because he was fascinated with what brought the characters together and what happened to them individually in the story. He was also drawn to the Lincoln side of the story. Once he came on, he was given a budget of $48 million. But he also said if it went over budget, he would pay the difference out of his own pocket. And once that was taken care of, they got the rest of their cast together. He had them do their own work as well before production started, having them talk to female officers about what it was like to be an officer and a woman in the department, researching forensic teams and how they did their work, and people who were paraplegic. One of them included Christopher Reeve himself. Yes, Superman they talked to. Despite the movie taking place in New York, though, a good chunk of the movie was shot in Montreal and Canada, with some scenes being done on a soundstage. There were some points when the team originally had the idea of including nude scenes for the main character, well, the main actress, I should say, but Philippe fought against this as he felt it would detract from the story. He won. Shooting lasted till December of 1998, And the movie was finally released on November 5th, 1999, and it opened to #1 at the box office, knocking the House on Haunted Hill remake off the top spot. In its opening weekend, it grossed over $15 million at the box office. Despite the next weekend, it dropped to the #2 spot because of Pokemon, the first movie, so pretty much kids are going to see that, and they're going to give the money to that. But we'll see more about the final result later. I'll even put, like, what I seen on the budget after it. But despite this, the critical reception was negative to mixed, as on Rotten Tomatoes, it carries a 30%. Critics praised the movie for its performances by the actors, but criticized the film for its story and just elements that they thought were better explored in Seven and Silence of the Lambs. Including Roger Ebert, who awarded the movie 2 out of 4 stars, who criticized the film for its absurdity in the plot, despite praising the actors and actresses. Despite this, the audience side tells a different story, as on that side it carries a 63%. On IMDb, it has a 6.7 out of 10. So the audience was definitely a lot kinder to this film. And obviously, I think that was who the film was for. The movie, while it was going for a theme similar to Seven and Silence of the Lambs, I don't think it was setting out to outdo those films. I think it was just setting out to be a fun detective thriller that stood on its own. And I agree with the audience. While it doesn't reach the level of, say, Seven or Silence of the Lambs or even 8mm, which I guess technically counts because it does have that detective side of the story, this is still a solid detective thriller that I think does some interesting things with the genre that I think makes it stand on its own, and I don't think people are talking about as much. I'll touch on those aspects later, though. But with the cast in this film, you got Denzel Washington from Malcolm X, Crimson Tide, and Fallen. You got Angelina Jolie, of course, Jon Voight's daughter from Cyborg 2 and Hackers. You got Queen Latifah from Juice and Living Out Loud. Ed O'Neill from TV's Married with Children. He was also in Wayne's World. He was also in a movie I actually really enjoy called Dutch. That's a John Hughes comedy. You have Michael Rooker. Yes, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer himself. He was also in Mallrats, JFK, and Tombstone. And you have small roles for people like Luis Guzman from Boogie Nights and Snake Eyes, Leland Orser from Escape from LA and Alien Resurrection. But getting into the plot is basically we meet this guy named Lincoln, played by Denzel Washington, who we learned during a crime scene investigation. A freak accident happened that pretty much paralyzed him. It's now a year later, and he's being cared for by this woman named Thelma, played by Queen Latifah, as he now suffers from panic attacks and seizures. In the middle of all this, we learned that there is this serial killer going around New York and posing as a taxi driver and abducting people, as he'll lock the door for people who get into the taxi and drive them to a place where he'll torture them. As this murder spree is going on, we meet this cop named Amelia, played by Angelina Jolie, who is a patrol officer dealing with her own past due to her father's suicide. She discovers one of the killer's victims. Impressed by how she handled herself, he gives her the task of taking on this case. At first, she's hesitant about taking it on, but eventually agrees to do it. So now Amelia basically starts communicating with Lincoln through his walkie as she starts investigating the scenes. All the while, Lincoln starts working with her while bedbound. And basically, they're both led into this web of horrors as they basically try to find out who the killer is and why he's on this killing spree, while also dealing with their own traumas. Will the two be able to figure out who the killer is, or will the killer get a hold of them and have their bones hanging on his door like a necklace? Now, starting off, I think the film really doesn't deserve the comparisons between it and other serial killer-like thrillers of the same vein, as I do feel it does its own things to really stand on its own. Because starting off with the story, it's more centered on the characters' struggles rather than just them investigating the horrible crimes. In particular, when it comes to Lincoln, who is bedridden and dealing with seizures, while you also have Amelia, who's dealing with being a woman in the department and dealing with the death of her father, who was suicidal, and having a hard time investigating the scenes. I like that because it feels like it's bringing the characters together in a way that's not just based on the fact that it's a story about them just solving this case, but also based on their qualms and how that is making it hard for them to really solve this case. And I thought it was a really interesting angle to go with. And it's helped by the two actors, which I'll get into, and how they play off each other. So it's really heavy on character development. And I found their stories very interesting and really realistic, because they interviewed a bunch of people who have dealt with this sort of problem. You can kind of understand why they were going for this angle, because it's really realistic, and it didn't feel like it slowed the film down to a qualm. Even in the moments with the other cops helping them investigate the whole thing, I thought that they were actually funny. Like, you have them in the apartment setting up the computers and looking over where he could be. It didn't feel annoying. It didn't feel out of place. It added some character development and wasn't going for just, oh, these guys are dicks to them because they're like, oh, we could do the case faster. No, they're willing to help, and I like that. Luis Guzman especially I liked. But I didn't mind those moments also because I liked the actors involved, and I thought they had some funny dialogue that they shared with Denzel and Angelina, and I thought it made it easier for me to swallow. And when it comes to the bone collector moments, I also thought those were really cool. I thought that there was a cool kind of lore to him. I like the fact that he's this killer who drives around New York with this taxi and lures people into this car, and he'll kill them, and he's killing people, as you find out. Spoiler here. Based on this book that he reads, and each of the chapters has him killing someone based on the people in the chapter. Like, one chapter has him killing a police officer, or another chapter has him killing a grandfather and his daughter. And you see him basically, his whole kind of... Basically, his whole calling card is where he'll cut the bones out and leave them behind as a way to tease the police. I thought that was really creepy, and as the film goes along, it does a great job building him up to the threat that he is. Like this one scene where the grandfather and niece scene, and he shoots a cop, and you see him drive off. And so you see that this killer is not holding back, as he's willing to kidnap kids. I think that really raises the stake, that makes it show anybody can be a target of this guy. And with those moments combined, the movie moves at a fast pace. It doesn't go slow, especially for this type of movie. I found myself really glued to the screen, really wondering what was going to happen next. And I think in those areas, it does a great job trying to stand apart from other similar serial killer movies of the same vein. Now, on a technical side, I know Phillip Noyce has said in interviews after the film was released that he felt he could have done a bit more to stand apart from films of this caliber, because it seems like he's connecting the film to David Fincher's directing in Seven. I think he's being a bit too hard on himself, as I think his directing is fine. I think he gives the film his own touch. He gives the film its own lighting that's not lit like it's trying to be Seven or Silence of the Lambs. He has its own color scheme that I think fits the tone of the film. There's a couple moments where I will say there is some kind of clunky day for night shots that look a bit like some of the color schemes in Payback. Thankfully, it wasn't as headache-inducing as those films. But I think he makes great use of the urban setting. I like this sort of grummy, kind of grimy urban feel to them. He knows how to place the camera in these moments to create some suspense and get a lot out of the location. His use of the camera in certain aspects, and in particular, the moments involving the killer, where he creates some really creepy shots where you see him hiding the face, or using low-angle shots so you just see his torso but not his face, so there's a real buildup of the mystery there. And he really knows how to create disturbing moments without relying heavily on violence and blood, so it's not an incredibly gory film, as opposed to, say, Seven or even the House on Haunted Hill remake, as most of the violence you do get is in the aftermath, much like Seven. But definitely, I think Seven is more disturbing and in your face with how violent it was, whereas this is violent, but it's not trying to be, it's trying to be a bit more artsy, whereas Seven is more in the vein of an arty Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the best way to describe it. Whereas here, it's less in your face, is what I mean to say. And I think it works. I didn't mind that, and I thought there was some really creepy imagery that really stayed with you after you left the theater, like the scene with the kid in the car, and just when she finds the body in the water and she pulls them ashore and you think the kid is dead but it's actually the grandfather. I thought those were handled really well. The only thing I will say about his directing is I think he overuses establishing shots a bit too much, so there's too many overhead shots of the city. And it's a cool shot at first, but it overstays its welcome because at some points he repeats the shot in a few different locations, and it wears on you after the 50th time it's done. And the score could be a bit better. Craig Armstrong, I didn't feel like there was much to his score in this movie. It's just a very bland score that doesn't leave an impression. Unlike Seven, which at least that started with Closer by Nine Inch Nails, or even Sounds of the Lambs, which I think has a much better score. But besides that, I think the film is well directed, and definitely I think is nowhere close to what he was saying, where he was like, oh, it's too much like Seven. No, it's fucking not. Along with that, I think he gets a lot out of his cast, as the acting is solid. Denzel Washington especially, who I like as an actor. Whenever he's in a movie, you know he's going to have a good performance. And here I think he does a solid job as Lincoln. I think he gets a lot out of his character, being that he's spending most of the time bedridden. But I think he plays the character well, and I think he gets around that angle of his character as he gives him a sense of presence that I think excels him from being held back and given nothing to do besides being bedridden. And I think it was a solid performance. I thought he was a likable character who you definitely felt sorry for, especially the moments when he is having the seizure. Angelina Jolie, she honestly surprised me with this performance. At first when I saw her, I mean, I like hackers, but I didn't think I was going to like her in this movie, especially since I'm more used to her and stuff like that. But I liked her. I bought her as this cop with a bit of a rough around the edges sort of vibe, especially in the moments when you see her investigating the case and she's having a hard time investigating and kind of crying at the scene, being like, I can't do it. I thought Angelina worked well with the material in those parts, delivered it in a way that didn't feel cheap or phony. And I think her and Denzel played great off each other, like the scene where he's looking through her past and there's sort of this, oh my God, he knows sort of vibe to her. I think she did it well, and I can't wait to check out the rest of her filmography. Queen Latifah, I think she did well. I appreciate she didn't go for the sassy black nurse who spews nonsense and trying to talk him out of doing the job, but was very down to earth and relatable and basically was willing to help as the film went along. And I respected that decision. I'll be honest. I think she's a better version of the wife from 8mm. I thought she was less annoying and more understanding about the situation they're in. So, yeah. But other actors, you got Michael Rooker as the captain of this station that they're a part of. And he does well with the part, playing this stuck-up guy who's very black and white in particular situations like this one. Ed O'Neill, nice to see him here, and nice to see him take on a serious role, being that I've always seen him as the comedy guy, whether it's Married with Children or Dutch. And I think he should take them on, whereas I think he does well. Luis Guzman, I had fun with as one of the computer guys helping them. He has some fun moments. But the acting is actually very solid, and definitely some surprises that I think shows off the talent of some of these people. Now, in terms of effects, like I said, this is not a gory horror film, so don't go in expecting huge amounts of gore. That being said, there's some pretty nasty parts to this movie. Like the rat part where basically he has this dude tied up and he puts like this bait on him and he makes the rats basically attack him. And the aftermath, like I said, is very gruesome as you basically see the rats in his body and they're digging into him or they're coming out and they have like meat in their mouth. And it's a very solid effect. So the practical effects there are very solid. The rat there is CGI, but I can understand the rat being CGI in that moment, considering the script requires them to jump towards the camera, and I think maybe they might have had a hard time training them, or maybe they just didn't want to do it. They were like, we'll just CGI them because of the time. But it looked fine. It looked fine. There's also some gunfights. You do get some practical blood squibs. So if you're into that, not 100% CGI, this movie has you covered. Like I said, it's not heavy on effects. But for what it is, and the effects that are there, look very good. But yeah, I find this to be a solid thriller that deserves more than what critics have given it. I already have touched upon a couple of cons with the film, but I think this last one really keeps the film from reaching a 10 out of 10 for me. And that's when the killer is revealed in the final itself. Because the killer is this guy, and I'm not going to spoil it because I know there are people who do want to see the film, but the killer is this guy who only has shown up for a couple scenes and you never see him again. And the film doesn't make him a focus or part of the mystery. And when he's revealed, you're like, what? That's him? It's a really unfair guessing game. On top of that, the guy they got playing him, you don't buy being a killer. Especially since when he's revealed, he's this shrimpy, nerdy guy. And the people he had to kill look like he could have been taken down by them. So it's not even believable when this guy comes into frame and he's revealed as a killer. If you're going to do this angle, too, have him more time on screen and cast someone who looks like they would be a killer as opposed to this guy. And that all comes down to the final as well, because the final's really lacking, and it takes place in the apartment of Denzel, and you have Angelina racing there to get there. And he's in the bed the whole time as the final's going on. And it doesn't feel intense because they have it where, okay, he's paralyzed, but it's not like he's going to crawl out of the apartment and have it where, oh God, I'm paralyzed, but I can't climb down the stairs, but I'll take the leap of faith. They don't do anything. I don't know why they didn't do that. And just how he dies is really unfulfilling because it's just one shot by one of them. I won't say who, but immediately he's dead. It could have been a lot more excited. And it just feels like the film either gives up in that moment or they ran out of money. That being said, I do like the ending, like the kind of resolution and the wrap up there. I thought it was a nice ending for the characters and to have their slice of heaven at the end. That, I will say, I did like. Those are really my only problems with the film, though, because bottom line, The Bone Collector is an interesting addition to the crime thriller genre that doesn't deserve to be labeled as a ripoff of Seven. It's suspenseful, has class, gives you the chills as the film goes forward that you'll be feeling as you leave the theater. So yes, I highly recommend you check out The Bone Collector. Like I said, it offers more than the critics that dumped on it. So when it comes down to it, I give The Bone Collector an 8 out of 10, and it deserves it. Therefore, gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely one to check out if you like crime thrillers, you like Seven. You're definitely going to get a kick out of this one. It is not a copy and paste of it, and it deserves to be seen beyond being that. So yeah, that is my review for The Bone Collector, and next time I am going to do a review of I'm going to try and get this out soon, a review of Son-in-Law, as I've been wanting to talk about this for Thanksgiving, seeing that we have Thanksgiving in a couple days. I also have a review coming of Sleepy Hollow and End of Days, as I just watched those. But this will be the next review coming. But I have those coming for in terms of games. Still got the Shadow Man review coming along the way. That'll be coming. We're just writing that up. Just got to just have one more part to put up of Shadow Man, and then I'll start editing the review. But with that said, I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of The Bone Collector. Did you guys enjoy it? I'd love to know you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.